All right, welcome to the April work session. Mr. Foray is not able to attend tonight, and we'll get started. And our student rep, hopefully, is home studying.
It's on a positive note, both of our student reps, one is at FBLA and the other student is also at an event. So the good news is both of our student reps are incredibly talented and involved, which is why there is no one here.
And it's not final week. All right, CCIU report.
I'd just like to take a moment. We talked the last couple meetings concerning where we were in the budget process with the CCIU, what their budget goals were to stay within Act 1, and that it looked like even though our participation fee would not increase over last year, it looked like everything was increasing over Act 1. So as we've gotten through the budgeting process, budgeting, the CCIU is very complicated and complex because there's more than one budget. We have to vote on it. Some of it affects us, some of it does not affect us. And budgeting with 12 school districts in the county, I think is as much a strategic endeavor as it is a philosophical, from a philosophical standpoint. I believe where we are right now, we have to have a working budget with the CCIU. They do an exemplary job. Do I believe we can maybe take a look at cost cutting? I do, but I think that because of the complexity of the finances and the three different budgets there, what we should really focus on is the marketplace budget, which is just like it says, marketplace. So it is their menu of what is available not only to every district in the county, but even charter schools, Catholic schools, private schools. Anybody can purchase whatever's available in the marketplace, and then everybody pays for what they use. So I think that my goal and what I'd like my colleagues on that board to get behind is that we reduce it down to something that is manageable. We can't take on this entire budget within 3 months before we have to vote on it. But I think that it's manageable to take the piece that affects us all the most, which is the marketplace, take a look at what is offered and see if maybe we can make some suggestions as to how they may be able to restructure, or we may be able to find some cost savings there. So this is not going to end at when we vote for the budget, which is sometime this month. I believe that in order for the county to make some changes that are going to affect all 12 districts' bottom line pocketbooks, it's going to take a lot more than 2 to 3 months. So what I am inclined to do is to say that I'm leaning toward we seriously look at accepting what we know to be the reality as to how the budget is put together, and take that marketplace piece of it on this year. So I just wanted to get back to everybody to let you know where we're heading. We do meet this coming Monday, a week from tomorrow, and I will bring back to you at the next meeting as to what was discussed and if there were any changes made that would affect our contribution for next year. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I do have a question. I see that the budget is later on in this agenda. So besides the marketplace, which school districts can choose to purchase services or not, as you said, the rest of it, are we just, us together with the other school districts, we have to take on whatever amount they say is due to them. Even if we do not approve it, we still have to buy into whatever amount the board.
So what happens is there's Chuck, I'm letting you. There's a consortium. Can you explain this so that he can make you understand it?
I think I understand we have to pay, I'm just double checking
Well,
that,
I mean,
but you have no
last-
choice, is what I'm
Last year,
asking.
Great Valley and Avon Grove voted against the IU budget, but we still have to pay because it passed, because the other 10 schools. Quite frankly, as long as Westchester, Downingtown, and Coatesville vote for the budget, the other 9 schools would probably have to do it because it's a weighted vote based on your population and things like that. So it may not be exactly that small, but it's not much bigger than those 3 large districts passing it and then
And then the budgets, there's a vocational technical budget. The vocational technical services that we get were the original, that is what the purpose of the CCIU was. So we all share in that cost. There are other costs that we all share in, and whatever our share is, our share is. Whereas the marketplace, we're only paying for what we are purchasing.
And just to remind everybody, that marketplace consists of a lot of things, including students that we send over to the IU for services that are that either we can't provide or they can be provided better over there, correct?
Yes, and
Things like
it's things like that as well as other things, different programs that may be beneficial, either regular ed or special ed that are not delivered anyplace else. It's a phenomenal packet when you take a look at what they have to offer, but when it comes right down to it, I do believe that there's a possibility that within some of those line items, the cost differential is trickled down into the part of the budget that the entire county pays. So that's where I think if there's going to be any cost savings at all, it might be at looking at some of those things and either restructuring or things that districts like Great Valley, for instance, we teach our core subjects. Why do we want to pay the CCIU because our children are there for VOTEC? So we, maybe in restructuring some of those things or pulling them back, that is a little competitive with districts. So it's those kind of things that I would like to spend the rest of my year on the board to have them delve into. Because I believe that if there's going to be any cost savings at all, this county is not ready to degrade the quality of our exemplary CCIU. I mean, it is an exemplary CCIU in the state. So from that standpoint, if there's going to be any cost cutting at all, it's going to be in that marketplace. So I think that's where we are better spending our time and our efforts. And if nobody has any objection, I'd like to go forward that way.
Yeah, Ellen, just a question. Roughly, what portion of our overall CCIU expense is represented in that the marketplace budget?
Chuck can give, I don't think it's a percentage. I believe that it changes all the time because our needs as children come into our programs, our needs on that marketplace may change. I know that Chuck could probably tell you
Is it like
off
half
the
of
top
our
of his
expense? Is
head.
it just like a couple? I don't mean exact. Like, is it a lion share? A little bit?
it's a line share.
Lion share.
Basically, the slides I gave you a couple times already on what's spent at the IU. If you carve out the tech school and the core budget contribution in there, the core budget contribution is about 40,000, the tech school contribution is about $1 million. The remaining $6 million is on the marketplace. So, and that deals with a lot of the CDC cost and a lot of ancillary things that are done through there. And it also, we only listed the things there that are in the budget for next year. And as you just said, if we have a new student go there with some kind of special need that is identified there that we haven't used in the past, we would have to pay for that too.
No objections, I'll go forward that way then.
All right, program.
The special education plan approval, that was presented by Dr. Wexler, and that's there for your review. It is up for public review for 28 days, and we will be able to vote on that next week, and then that will be submitted to the Department of Education. That's the first of our 3 comprehensive plans to be submitted.
All right, the monthly enrollment numbers are there. And then tomorrow evening is the, excuse me, I have a chest cold, so I apologize. An instructional technology subcommittee meeting at 6 PM here at district office. So there will be I believe some students coming in to demonstrate some of the one-to-one technology. So any board members interested, it'd be a good opportunity to come by and see all the exciting things the kids are having fun with doing as they learn. So, all right, next thing up is policy. I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Great. The policy committee met here at district office on Tuesday, April 3rd, starting at 7:30 in the morning. There were no major changes in the policies, but I'm going to go through them anyway. And just as a reminder that we often have associated ones, so 339, 439, and 539 kind of are viewed as a group. So if I talk about making changes to one of them, if relevant, it's made in the other ones, depending. Okay, policy 105.4, alternative credit for PE. Just as a reminder, this is not a new policy. We've been allowing this for more than a decade. We added the term high school to the policy to make it clear to parents who are reading that the policy only pertains to students in high school. So just perfectly clear, middle schoolers cannot get alternative credit for PE. And we knew it, but just to make it easier for anybody who's navigating the system for the first time. And there are no changes to the intent or the spirit of this policy. The administrative guidelines and the policy are now 2 separate documents. And you'll see that a lot of the work that we're doing in policy committee is often just to separate out a policy and then a more descriptive administrative guidelines. And when we need to change the administrative guidelines, we can, and without having to change the whole policy. Policies 339, 439, and 539, these dealt with uncompensated leave and the associated administrative guideline. So we moved a lot from the policy to an administrative guideline. We had minor language changes. The policy allows personnel the ability to take a leave of absence due to special circumstances. And just to point out that we did change in this policy, you'll see it in 439, for example, we changed from having like a 60-day notice to a 60 calendar day notice. And that's significant because you can imagine if there was some confusion about what we meant. And so this way it's calendar days. It's not over the summer or over weekends, or it's calendar days. We're on the same page. And a lot of that, this is what we're trying to do, is just make sure that's what's in our head is conveyed in the writing. Jury duty policy is 342, 442, and 542. The funds paid for jury duty must be submitted to the district. No major changes to this policy. 344, 444, 544, this concerns liability of employees. This policy is overly broad. It's not used in other districts, and it was repealed upon, I'm asking to repeal it upon the advice of our solicitor. 404 is employment of professional employees. We made no changes. The policy was previously updated in 2015, so we've looked at this fairly recently. In policies 432 and 532 with the administrative guidelines, no major changes. Policy 347, workers' comp, and the administrative guideline, they were reflected to update current legislative changes and mandates. We also wrote in there who gets the paperwork specifically, like what position, again, just to make it clear so that, when people are navigating the system, they know, okay, the paperwork goes here instead of, to the appropriate department or whatever. 440, responsibility for staff for student welfare, administrative guideline. We made slight changes to indicate the staff responsibilities for students. 541, benefits for regularly employed part-time personnel, no major changes. We did make a small change just to note that the handbook is periodically updated, periodically approved. And last policy is 303.1, 404.1, and 50, I'm sorry, I think that's 304.1, 404.1, and 504.1, background checks of prospective employees. This we are recommending for appeal upon the advice of our solicitor, and contents of these policies is addressed in all other school policies. Any questions on these? These are these groups of policies are a lot less, I think, interesting than the student policies, but it's tightening up the language and just trying to make it easier to navigate.
I have no questions, but I just want to say again, this is it's such tedious work, and
I love it.
I'm so grateful that you love it, because I couldn't do it, but you and your team are doing a great job. I have a complete understanding, which is not usual, you know that, when I get your things on these policies, and I'm really grateful that you guys put this time and effort into it. It really helps me.
Thanks. So just to give credit, there's a whole team.
Yes, I said your
And I'm the one who speaks, but I'm not the one who does the most work. Thank you. And
Shout out to the
for the record, just if anybody would like to be chair or be a part of the committee. No, I'm just saying, like, this is not my fiefdom. I'm happy to include others and pass this on. I enjoy doing it, but it's great. It's early in the morning. My children were able to attend with me, so I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at the last meeting. It was great to have an audience. I bribed them with donuts. But that's the policy. We also have some policies up for second reading and adoption. They're listed there. We don't discuss these at the policy committee unless there's a specific reason, because we've already discussed them in the past, but they're noted there. And then as indicated, there's some policies to be rescinded. And we don't rescind without talking to lawyers. So, and when there are changes, my goal is no surprises. So I will tell you what I'm thinking, and that's what you see is what you get.
One question, when we rescind, I mean, we're not actually looking to do that, right? Isn't that usually something that is prompted by the attorneys based on legislation or a major change?
Right now, we're going through a systematic process where we're looking at every single policy. So as we go down the numbers, we're doing this chunk this year, and we're planning on having for the board and anybody else interested a list of exactly what we're going to do next year. So you can see as we go through, we may discover, hey, this is covered in other policies. And usually it's the attorney who brings that to our attention, or because the attorney is in contact with all the other schools, they may say, we found that most schools are getting rid of this, so do you guys want to consider it? We never have to. If there was a compelling reason somebody had to keep these, I'm open to hearing it. But I usually try not to override the solicitor, because that's why we pay them.
Thank you to you and your team. All right, facilities. The building usage reports there. Any update at this point? Because you do have a meeting.
If you don't want to go to the informational technology meeting tomorrow
Yes.
night, there's always the facility meeting, which will be happening tomorrow night. And we are taking a look at our multi-year budget. I know we took a little bit of a dive into that at our last finance committee meeting, but we'll be taking we'll be taking a look at that again and taking a little bit deeper dive into that. So please feel free to come to that, and it'll be tomorrow night at 6.
All right, facilities meeting tomorrow night, 6 PM here in district office. All right, nothing under transportation or food. Finance, real quick. Finance Committee met on April 2nd, 2018. The superintendent and business manager reviewed the current status of the budget. The board requested a review of reserves, which was provided, and a status of the one-to-one program, which was also provided. In addition, the superintendent and business manager reviewed the status of the budget. Tonight, the superintendent and business manager will review the information needed to approve the preliminary budget. The board also requested information on costs of the one-to-one program so far, and I believe that will be presented. If the board wants any if the board wants any additional information for future meetings, we need to discuss that tonight. The reason being is that we need to look at passing the preliminary budget so that we can post it for 30 days prior to it being voted on and approved. So we just need to, the timeline is getting shorter, so we need to make sure. So if anyone else was at our meeting and wants to add anything, please do. And if we have any questions about the finances, let's make sure they get out there tonight and we'll get them answered if we can't answer them tonight. Make sense? All right, so did anybody have anything else from our meeting they wanted to add at this point? All right, then we'll just dive into the budget report.
Sorry for the delay. Based on the fact that you did a pretty deep dive last week, tonight's is going to seem pretty abbreviated for you, as we did. There is a information on one-to-one cost there. I do not have it in PowerPoint, but you can share that up there and see. For the past 3 years, the one-to-one technology has kind of dropped every year. It was about 516,000 year one, 509,000 year two, and the most recent is 453,000. And you note, just as a note on the thing, when we say, so we've already purchased the 1819 because we need to get them in so they can be, the tech department and all can configure them and all. And the cost we have per iPad is $493. That's a little different than what you heard on the advertisements not too long ago, because ours includes Apple Care, and we also buy a protective cover for them. Kind of minimizes damage if they're dropped or whatever. So
I think based on the last meeting, we had discussed monitoring the need as we move forward with the Apple Care, and we'll continue to monitor and look at how much we use it and cost versus benefit.
yeah, we do have an account set up that we use, that we keep the money from the students in there to, and the first few years will be minimal because Apple Care covers things, but Apple Care only covers things for 3 years. So the funds are built up to cover that year 4, which will then go in perpetuity eventually. So, okay. This is our budget, $105,700,000, and it's essentially the same as it was last week. No changes for you. Predominantly, our budget is made up of 2/3 staffing, some big chunks for supports of other schools, and some budget reserves. The state sources, or local sources, you see we have revenues of about $100 million total from state, local, and federal, leaving us a budget gap, a use of reserve of 3.6 million, or 5.5 million. Projected use of reserves, which we discussed last week, which we use the final bit of reserves from the pension fund reserves that were established years ago. Bringing the total down that we have for any revenue before any taxes of 103 million, with a budget gap of about 1.9 million, which is the cost of the index. As recommended, no exceptions. We did not do exceptions. This was just the average cost for a taxpayer, both a median taxpayer and an average taxpayer. And the board, the deadlines. Next week is you're required, based on your calendar, you need to adopt a preliminary budget. And then we need to put that on inspection or out for public view. We will probably put it out as soon right after that as possible, but no later than May 14th. We have to do some advertising, which hopefully Linda will be back in time, or Dr. O'Toole will be doing it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I want to thank Dr. O'Toole for stepping in for Linda, who is still recuperating from her injury. And then the final budget technically needs to be done by June 30th, which will most likely, based on what we're seeing from the state, be still sooner than the state does, even though we were told they were going to get it done early this year. So we'll see. I know they're coming back early, but we'll see.
Chuck, quick question on slide 2, infrastructure, the 8.1 million, are there any capital project costs in that, or is that?
Yeah, that's where that's why it rose so much this year. That's where the $3.4 million transfer to cover the $3.8 million capital budget for next year.
But you're saying there'll still be 5.2 of debt servicing as well?
Oh, yeah. We had 9.4 of debt servicing
Okay, I
original.
thought this was our last year.
No, yes, this was our last year. This current year, we have budgeted 9.4, give or take, million. Next year, it's 5.2 of the I think I had a slide on the other one that shows 3.4 will be transferred into capital reserve. And as I said last week, now you truly are just budgeting what you need to pay for in capital reserve as a transfer. 800,000 was moved into the general fund to cover technology purchases, of which a little more than half of them are for the one-to-one. The other part of that purchases are for other infrastructure needs and technology that are constantly being updated, like the infrastructure of our buildings. So.
And I just want to say, as we start looking at capital budgets, I encourage everyone to take a look at them. We are really going to be, there's a lot of deferred maintenance that we've been deferring for years.
Jen, we've been talking about that for years. Just to put it
that
out
we
there,
were
this is
talking
nothing
about-
new.
This is
Because
not
I hear this
new.
every single meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
but this isn't new. We've been talking about it since before, well, at least since I've been on the board. I think maybe a little bit longer when I was in the room on the other side. That part of what we wanted to do when this debt service came off was this is how we were going to fund our capital. I just want to strongly encourage everyone to take a look at the capital budget as it comes out, take a look at the facilities budget. This year, we're going to be over $500,000 in unanticipated costs, and we really have almost no wiggle room in the outlying years. So I really encourage everyone to really look at that and understand what that budget means, because I know that there were some questions at the last meeting that perhaps facilities didn't need all of the money that we were planning to transfer over. And I just want to caution everyone to take a look at that budget. There's a lot of things in there that may or may not make it to the years in which we're hoping for. And I know that Mr. Linderman is very concerned that if we go under a certain amount of money, which I believe is $2.5 million, if I remember correctly, then we might be in a tight spot for overages, which are clearly happening. Like I said, this year's over $500,000 in overages. And these are things that must be repaired. This is building things. These are not decisions on any kind of staffing or anything. This is failures in facilities that we need to take care of.
Also, if I can remind the board, we did not have a plan to increase our capital reserve to cover. We've never sat as a board and discussed, okay, how do we want to?
We talked about, though, that when the debt service, we've talked about the debt service for 2 years.
But I'm saying, leading up to that, for a couple years, we didn't do anything.
Years ago. I'm
Yes.
just saying.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So it is huge, and Jen is right. Everybody really should look at it year by year, because we have a lot of work to do making decisions on just that budget.
Now, Jen, are you guys in facilities, just knowing the construction as I drive down the street, and we all drive in traffic, not very fast, is facilities looking at, are we going to need to build a kindergarten center or a
So
middle school
facilities,
center or?
so facilities isn't necessarily looking at, next year we need to build a building, but what facilities is looking at is we are staying in, as we talked about before, that the district is staying in contact more closely with the local townships and planning commissions to try to take a look at and thereby develop some kind of historical perspective on what they say initially they think the build-outs are going to be, what the build-outs actually are when they come out, and see if there's any kind of correlation to single-family homes tend to have more children in them, apartments tend to have less, so that we can start building that historical data. Because while we kind of know that empirically, we've never like formally gone about trying to figure it out. How far off are they normally like 80% off on their initial estimates? So that's one of the things that facilities, we're going to look at every meeting, and every time the district has a meeting with the township planners, we're going to kind of update that. And I know that our next meeting is with the townships is not going to happen until after the April facilities meeting. So while we might touch on it at the facilities meeting in April, we're really going to talk about it in May, because that's the next bit of data.
And just to keep us all in the loop, because I can't remember, this isn't a leading question, but how often do we get updated on how much space we have left for students in the district? Like, will we have enough time if we did need to do something drastic, like get a new facility?
So
Will we have enough time to work with that?
It's my understanding that we need about 2 years of planning to talk about buildings. So, yes, the whole idea, that's the whole idea with bringing it up constantly at facilities, is so that we're not necessarily saying at every meeting here is the time to build a building yet, but we are going to say that in facilities. And when facilities says, oh, we think maybe this is time to start having these conversations as a full board, then we'll absolutely bring that back to the board.
And we'll continue if we need to readjust populations within different schools, for example, the elementary school boundaries. We still have that ability to move students as needed.
We always do, and that's kind of why we put it on the official facilities agenda, was so that facilities was taking a closer look at it on a more regular basis.
Jen, thanks. I just want to add that, thanks for that clarification, because although we're acquiring historical data or building it, we are also looking proactively right now, if a large development was to be built.
Absolutely.
So that we can prevent, we can redistrict if we need to, or plan
trying-
for buildings if we need to, well ahead of time.
Our goal is absolutely to try to make sure that we're ahead of that as much as we can. Our biggest problem is that we have absolutely zero control over this data and whether or not they share this data with us until they really get those final permissions and they're actually moving dirt. So how fast we can be, how nimble we can be with this data is really going to depend on where the developers and the township planning commissions are with it.
And you've showed examples of where the development starts out targeted towards the elderly population and then surprise doesn't end up that way.
Or surprise, there's a whole lot more units than what they originally, because the difference, this is part of what we're trying, we kind of empirically know that the difference between what they very initially proposed, which is when the planning commissions historically told us what was happening, and what actually happens when they start moving that first shovel of dirt can be very widely different. So we're trying to get a handle on how we best keep a handle on that, and because we know that we're a growing community. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't think that Great Valley is growing in this moment. So how fast, how much, what does that mean? That's the part that we're trying to figure out how we solidify and drill down and bring back.
And historically, we've flexed with modules, not to everybody's liking, but that is an option too, depending on whether or not it's a surge of a grade or a,
I don't think,
right, but I'm just saying.
I don't think that
It's not just saying we're going to look at buildings, it's also saying what other options could be available
yes,
if needed.
I'm not saying
both
right now that there's
short-term and long-
anything
right, that's what I'm
right now
saying.
that's going to tell us that we
Yeah, I
need
think
to
a
build.
building is a last
I don't want
resort. I mean,
anybody to
no
take
one
away
wants
from this.
to, no one
My
wants to
point
raise
is though, even
taxes.
if we don't have enough warning, right, it's not like we're
Oh, we're not gonna-
doubling
we are
up classrooms. because-
Absolutely going
right.
to take care of our kids so that they
Right.
have the best educational experience that they can have. We're not going to like have kids at the DoubleTree, But what that means for long-term planning is something that's why we're trying to look at it on a more regular basis. But I don't want to suggest to anybody that right now we think it's time to pull a trigger on any of that at all.
At the national conference I attended last weekend, I had the chance to talk to some folks from Oklahoma, some school board members, and holy moly, when you defer maintenance on schools, bad things happen. Mold, animals, water leaks, structural problems, huge impacts on learning. So they are going to be digging themselves out for a long time. We're nowhere near there, thank goodness, but it was a real life example of, wow, when you do let things go too far, that's majorly expensive to fix it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions anybody wants answered that either tonight or for next week that?
Are we going to that other presentation that's in there?
Well, just for your information, I put in, and I'm sorry, I forgot I had put that in there. I attended a conference in March, and with our Forecast 5 group, one of the things that Forecast 5 does is they are a data analytic company, and they do data analytics nationwide. And I know Dr. Speaker Polovinsky and I, we really like this program. It's really a kind of a unbiased way of pulling data up. So as we all were in this presentation, they had done a presentation for each one of us, showing us who, if you're going to compare us to peers in the state, these were the schools, and I don't have this on a PowerPoint, it's in a PDF for you. But if you're going to compare us with schools in the state, these are the ones that are most similar to us. None of them are in Chester County. There are three from Delaware County, Wallingford, Swarthmore, Springfield, and Rosetree. There's one from Montgomery County, Upper Dublin. So it goes on, and you can see through the slides, and it's just a sample of things they put together. Based on low income, based on ELL students. So it kind of makes it, these are the people, I know it's hard not to compare with like your next door neighbor or a school district like down the road, but as we look in Pennsylvania, and it's harder to do it outside of the state because certain rules change as far as, not for free and reduced lunch, so to speak, but for ELL and for other things like that, because states do have some control over some of that stuff. So just for your information, if you want to.
Do we know the basis of why they chose these for comparison?
Purely analytics, purely based on the demographics of that school district compared to our school district.
So these are
It's really interesting.
probably, excuse me again, probably schools that are about 4,000 kids.
They are
Similar,
And if you look at the level of
Yeah.
low income, it's really similar. They found
That's what I mean,
districts
yeah.
that were very
Well, when I was away at this national conference, one of the things, and I'm very excited to kind of think about this and talk a little bit with administration and then bring it back. I know we've only had Forecast 5 for about a year and a half, and I took a lot of classes on data analytics and Forecast 5. So there are a lot of districts doing a lot of really very interesting planning with Forecast 5, and I think that's why it was so powerful to go to talk to other places, because I don't know that our neighboring school districts are necessarily doing this, but there's some other school districts, and based on some of the state reported data, you can really dig down. And one of the things that a lot of them who are very, very data savvy are talking about is not only having multiple sets of comparison groups so that you're not only comparing to your local schools, and they talked about it being the schools in your football communities, because that used to be how you did it, but going out and looking at schools, having different disparate groups for different things, like looking at expenses, looking at for comparatively size schools, for schools with a comparison of free and reduced lunch, for schools that are compared academically, what does that mean, how far away from this deviations to the mean, and there are some school districts that really dig down into this data, and I was very excited to see some of the districts who are a little bit more experienced with Forecast 5. I know that we're getting there, and Chuck is working on all that, but there are some really exciting directions that we can take a look at with this Forecast 5 in regards to our data, and again, because Pennsylvania is one of those states that has that reporting out, and so everyone is using the similar buckets. And my understanding is with ESSA that at some point it may become a little more national, and they're talking about not only looking in your local communities, but eventually with ESSA being able to look nationally and saying, okay, we're a high-performing school in Pennsylvania, what does that mean in California? But right now, because the comparative buckets aren't quite the same, and the laws aren't quite the same, and the reporting's not quite the same, you don't necessarily, and I could even see that looking at the schools that I was looking at in Wisconsin and how they were doing some of their data. Some of it's just not, their laws aren't the same, so the data is not going to compare quite as well. But it's very interesting and exciting, and I'm very excited to see what more we can do with Forecast 5.
And there's a potential there to identify areas where we should look more because, for example, the Forecast 5 lets you look at standard deviations. So if you have something 2 standard deviations from the mean, you might want to take a look at it, and it also can help you prioritize. So for example, if you can see what's aligned with your strategic plan. So for example, if your strategic plan says, I want to work on instructional issues, and then you find out that you've only, done this much in instructional, and other schools have done this much more, then hey, is this where we want to be, or do we need to invest at an equal rate as those around us? So it was neat to be able to get some numbers and data from.
So ladies, usually after conference, y'all we bring our stuff
today.
We got that today. I thought you'd have that presentation ready for us. But what can we expect? Do we have any idea? Because I know I read the booklet and I know what was there, and I cannot wait to hear.
We'll put together a presentation, but our priority was right now in focusing on getting ready for this meeting because it can wait.
Come on, I'm kidding, but I'm really looking forward to it. It was an
You
exciting
can come
book.
over to my house, or right here after, and I will tell you every single word, because I
think
took
she said
notes.
you had 3 hours on the plane. What's wrong?
One of the things, there is the slide deck, the PDF that's available. So this is just a snapshot of some of the information. If you take some time and just look through the comparisons, it will give you an idea, a little bit about what Steph and Jen were talking about.
It's really exciting stuff. I just can't. And then they said these districts, what they do is they reach out to these other districts who maybe they never even, not that you never heard them. I mean, I know that we know our state districts, but that somebody you might not talk to on a regular basis that is a high-performing academic school district, but maybe is less deviations from the mean and something that you say like, hey, how are you able to do this with this? It was very, very
And not all the districts use this program, so Forecast 5, so they may not even know what you're talking about, but because we're all required to upload data to the state, we're submitting it anyway. So when the school from Wisconsin, Wisconsin was showing the data, they'd put slides and say, the other districts have, no idea that they're even up on our slides, but you can see this district has a problem with this, and it was crazy. Like I would, if I was another school district next to them, I'd want a copy of those slides. And
that exact experience happened with, Chuck actually presented a lot of our data, and to your point, you don't have to be a Forecast 5 user to have your data included. So Chuck presents to other business managers across the state, and it was interesting to hear some of their perspectives where they did not realize that they were overspending in certain categories until Chuck had it on their slide.
Could I place an early plug next year? Mark your calendars. I believe it's March either 30th to April 1st or 2nd, and the conference is in Philadelphia, and it's truly worth attending. I'm not a big fan of conferences or in-services, but this one this year was exceptional.
So I will continue on in the finance. It's our annual time to award bids. So there's some bids there for art, athletic and medical and athletic training equipment. We opened them Easter week on Thursday, and they're currently being analyzed. We will have a final recommendation on the agenda for this week, but you have a list of who bid and how much they bid. You also have the revised copy of the substitute teacher service. That's STS. They provide our substitutes every year. Dr. Gaffredo was working with them and with our attorneys on that.
Chuck, I just wanted to know quickly on that one. I assume it's up for renewal now. Are there any major changes to it? I assume it's up there because it must be time to renew it.
The costs are the same. We had a reduction in our cost in December, if you may recall. So they have stayed the same. I'll have to get Dan to answer. There was some language changes that our attorney suggested, not major.
Nothing material to the
But the costs are the same.
Okay.
And we seem to be still, 2 years, we seem to still be on the upper side of average is what we pay subs, which is good. So we're we tend to not have the missing subs or whatever you want to call them. I mean, yeah, it seems like they're always, whenever, it's always a bad place, but our fill rate is in excess of 90-some%, which is better than it was when we were doing them ourselves. So this worked out for us.
The reality is, though, that there is a national shortage of substitute teachers. So to say that our fill rate is 90+ is great, unless you're the 5 to 7% of the unfilled. So that is a reality. So when you hear that there is a substitute shortage, we are feeling it. We're just not feeling it to the extent that some other districts are.
Yeah,
What
there's always-
happens when
there's
they're
al-
unfilled?
Oftentimes, it's a sharing of coverage or a reallocation of our internal resources, and we really try to avoid doing that. It's redeploying staff or utilizing prep periods, and that's really not best instructional practice.
Thank you.
Again, as Mrs. Brill elaborated, the Chester County core budget and occupational ed budget is listed there for approval. You have some professional development contracts there for.
Well, real quick, the marketplace budget is next month, correct?
Next month or June, sometimes it's June, sometimes it's even August. So,
And I will
Well, we
tell
talked
you,
about it, I'm just making sure everybody's clear that
It's
it's not,
later.
it's not here tonight, it's not up for vote next
And when
week.
you approve the marketplace contract, you have to select the items that you need or may need, or else you have to go back and revisit them. So we generally will select, we may need this for everything, because we don't know if we need it. I mean, we've gone years. I mean, we've gone years without a student in the young parents program. We may have 3 next year. I'm not saying that, but it's the only example I could give you. So we don't have a budget number in there, and they didn't have an estimated number in it, because for the past couple of years, we haven't had one. But in years past, we've had some ones in there too. We've also had some other higher level needs or needy students that we don't have, and if they come, if they're visually or hearing impaired, that maybe we don't have any, we would have to use that service, so.
and I just want to add, when you take a look at the CCIU, so what Chuck is saying, really, the way that rolls out is that they're actually forecasting and they're budgeting based on that information that they get back from the district. So from Great Valley, they say, well, okay, here's what we potentially could use. So it could be a justification as to why they are leaning to keep certain things or to keep a certain structure. So it does have a bearing on the effects of the economics. So these are some of the things that we're actually talking about. Now also, I've sat with Chuck a couple times on this, and we're going to target specific things, but it's those type of things where I think we can hone in.
The professional development, these are for some June professional development for grades 6 to 12 and.
Just a quick question on that. I saw it was for math. How does that relate? Does that relate to the new math curriculum that was put in place, or is it separate because this is the middle school? The math curriculum's a couple years now, right? But just.
It's actually to support specific courses, our Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 courses, and to provide consistency and instructional supports for the teachers as well as the students
Okay,
in those courses.
thank you.
Okay. You also have the administrative services agreement, which technically starts July 1st of 2017. Through our consortium, the IU has kind of taken the lead with their attorney to bang out this agreement. It's for we use the Blue Cross Network as our third-party administrator, so it's their service agreement for that network. We opened the bids for, or the proposals for PCAs and instructional aides. I have there, we received from 10 firms, it's actually 11. So, we're currently analyzing those right now. We hope to finish the analysis and possibly interview some of the finalists this week so we can have a recommendation for you for Monday.
So could you just explain briefly, what we have we opened the RFP on is to fill our PCA needs. Can you explain how we do that now and how that's going to change?
If you remember when we spoke about how we're attacking, one of the areas of the budget that is extremely high is our costs for personal care assistants as well as instructional aides. And our numbers of individuals have increased. So programmatically, we're looking at how are we controlling our numbers of individuals. This piece with the RFP deals with the cost per individual. And what we had found when we did the analysis, if you remember about 2 months ago when we did the all call to all of the county superintendents of how much they're paying per hour for services, there was a great disparity for hourly rate. And that disparity wasn't necessarily what was going to the employee. The disparity was often the administrative costs associated with the provider. So the RFP has brought about, and I want to thank Chuck and his team. Missy Claus did an amazing job in writing the RFP and organizing and really reaching out. To have 11 firms respond, it obviously was a very popular request for proposals. So this portion is looking at cost per employee and how we can control those costs. What we're doing internally through the special education plan, through the pre-referral process, through the pupil services, is looking at the actual number in order to maximize program effectiveness as well as meeting the needs of students. So we're attacking it twofold. This leg that we're talking about now is actually cost per individual per hour.
So right now, we're actually contracting for those PCAs through the CCIU or through CRES, independent agencies?
Independent agencies. And there are differentials in the type of aids that are provided, and agencies specialize almost in the type of aids that they provide. So currently, we're using 2 primary agencies, and CRES is one of those, and they also put in a bid. That the agencies we currently use, as well as 9 additional, have put in bids to be competitive. So, and what we're looking for is making sure we can fill, because another thing, just like substitute teachers, aid positions are oftentimes not always filled. So it's trying to look at it comprehensively to make sure that we're not compromising quality of programming, but being as efficient as we possibly can.
And Regina, these aides in particular are mandated IEP aides, correct? Like these aides, if we don't fill this position, then we risk being in conflict with the student's IEP if the IEP states they need to have a PCA aide.
Yes.
So
And
this isn't something we can say, hey, we're just not going to fill. This isn't like subs where there are other people who shift around. This is a very specialized mandated need that I'm sure the state has some percentage that we have to have filled.
well, it's per individual IEP, individualized education plan. So if it dictates that plan warrants and requires a personal care assistant, then not providing that is a violation of a child's IEP. And if you're found to be in corrective action, the consequence for corrective action is compulsory compensatory education, which means you compensate for any missed educational benefit that the child would have had in the absence of the service. It becomes much more costly to not comply with the law. So that's why we always want to be really careful that we're making sure that we're aligning our needs with the provisions.
So the advantage of doing the IEP or the RFP is not only do we have the ability to cost control based on, okay, well, there's this much money in the bucket, this is what we could do, but we also tailor the goals of the RFP. So instead of us just making a phone call, let's say, to an agency that we know what they supply, now we've tailored exactly what Great Valley's need is and put it on that RFP, which is phenomenal. Thank you. I read that and it was very well done. And I thought it touched on things that are not ordinarily, I think, taken into the grand scheme.
And that's kudos to Chuck, brought a team together of Missy, Dan Gaffredo, and Joanna Wexler. So it was truly a collective piece of work so that everyone's needs were heard, and that was inclusive in the RFP. So what we get as an outcome will be aligned to what we stated was our goal.
You have the very generous donation by the middle school PTO for approval, and our year-to-date spending report. So.
I just want to highlight the fact the middle school PTO actually did assimilated much like the foundation at Great Valley has done in the past, and actually asked for teacher recommendations of what kinds of things would be would enhance their programs. So much of these donations are aligned to almost like grants that were written by teachers.
And we thank all the PTOs because I know they're all very generous to the schools. So that's provides a lot of those complementary needs that the teachers really find helpful. So it's amazing to read some of the things that teachers put in for that you're like, doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't they have it? But it's good that this is able to fill some of those needs. So
As one example, there's a request for microscopes.
yeah.
And I mean, I want our kids to have access to microscopes, so thank you, PTO.
And also just about the middle school PTO. Middle school is a rough 3-year period of time for children. We've all had children and we all know that. I honestly, I want to drink that Kool-Aid. They are so hardworking, so dedicated, outside of that, what's in their head in that 3-year period. Mr. Whitelock, I say this to you all the time. You do a phenomenal job with that group, as do all our teachers with all our clubs, but you do a phenomenal job with a group that really needs that structure at that time, and I'm really grateful. I was when my kids were there, so thank you, Sean.
All right. The monthly reports there. Any other committee reports or board comments that I missed? The committee reports?
No committee reports, but I do have a board comment if it's okay.
Yep.
Charlestown Township lost a township supervisor. Mike Rogers was a supervisor for 12 years. He raised 9 children in the Great Valley School District. One of his daughters was our PTO president. And it will be a loss for the Great Valley community. He was a great community servant and a huge supporter of the school district and the Great Valley community at large. Mike was well into his 80s, and he was in his 3rd year as supervisor. So as a neighbor and a friend, I'm going to miss him after 30 years, but I just wanted to take a moment to, in case somebody knows Connie or the family, you want to reach out, now would be a good time.
And Dave, could I just preemptively announce that due to a personal vacation, I will not be here on Monday, April 16th. It's overseas, and I will not be calling in. I don't think that the quality that I would get in reception would make it that I could really contribute, so I think it's better I sit this one out. I did take a look at the special ed proposal, and I do support it. I know I don't have a vote because I won't be here, but I thought it looked great, so.
All righty. The draft agenda is there for review for voting on for next week. Anybody got any questions on that? All right, at this point, I will open up the microphone for public comment. It's requested that anyone addressing the board stand and state your name and residence. The issue to be addressed. This is a public comment portion. It is not designated to be question and answer period. All questions that will be received by the superintendent and the board. If you could please limit your time to 3 minutes or less so others can speak. Thank you.
Is it on? Okay, great. Chuck trying to shut me up. Tonight, we listened to the presentation on the budget as we have for the last several months, and I find something very troubling with the school board. In all the time that the presentations have been made, no one on this school board has asked, is there any way that we can cut the budget? That bothers me. In my opinion, this administration is running roughshod over this school board. It goes back, I think, to back sometime in February. The board asked the school superintendent to come back and make a recommendation as to what would happen to the budget if $1 million was to be cut, and another proposal if $2 million was to be cut. And the school superintendent basically came back and said, here's the budget. And I'll paraphrase now, she basically said, stick the budget in your ear, it is what it is. And everybody on this school board just caved in. All of you should be ashamed of yourselves. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Trey Pine. My wife Donna's in the back there, Great Valley High School, class of '68. I wish to support the measures that continue a high quality.
Real quick, can you just say where you live?
17 Glenlock Lane.
No problem, just make sure for the record.
Perfect, okay. We wish to support the measures that continue a high quality education. We've enjoyed that our 2 children received. Both required support outside of the normal classroom experience. Support costs money, so we support that. One was part of a gifted program and received extra help to develop an admissions portfolio for RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, top 5 school in the country. She made it in. I contribute that to Great Valley. The other received extra support with her dealings with dyslexia, and as I struggled reading out loud, I had the same problems. I gave her that. So one got into RISD and graduated with honors. The other one got into Virginia Tech and graduated with highest honors. So good job, Great Valley. Unfortunately, I've heard of late that special needs people are not being served as well, and people have left the school district because they had children that had learning disabilities and stuff like that. So I'm saddened to hear that. My kids have been out of school for a while now, and I just wanted to sort of present, here I am, a retired guy. I heard when I was young that, you know, I am on a fixed income. Well, fixed income would have been welcome as an engineer because we were laid off and things like that. The trade-off, I would say, is higher taxes for better education. As a retired person, I'd accept. And I look at the investment in education as an increase in my real estate values. So I just wanted to put my word of support as everybody worries about cutting. Perfect timing, I'm saying, keep your work up and keep the education. Somebody wanted a copy?
My name is John Odell, and I live on Marlin Drive in Willistown. Okay. As I said, my name is John Odell. My family has lived on Marlin Drive in Willistown since 1998. In 1979, when my wife and I came to this area, we lived on the Philadelphia Navy base as I was active duty military. We moved to Chestnut Hill when we had children, but then moved out to Chester County because we wanted better schools. We finally chose to buy our house in the Great Valley School District because of the reputation that we heard from many people, our interaction with parents with children in the schools, and other members of the community. We are very happy with the education that both of our boys received at Great Valley, excuse me, and the many opportunities that were made available to them. Because of our living arrangements and how we moved, while my older son only attended the middle and high school, my younger son attended Katie Markley, Sugartown, General Wayne Elementary, and the middle and high schools. He missed Charlestown somehow. My wife and I were concerned about the movement of our younger son because of the different schools, between the different schools. We were very impressed with the high level of professionalism by both the administration and the faculty of all the different schools that he attended, and they made sure he was able to handle the transitions between the different schools to support the learning issues that he had. We know that staffing of a school is key to providing a quality education to all children. We also know that hiring and keeping high-quality educators comes with a financial cost. However, we believe that that cost is actually an investment to make the Great Valley community a better place for the residents who currently live here, to make it a more attractive location for businesses and for people who may want to move into this community. According to the district homepage, the mission of the Great Valley School District is to ensure that every student is inspired and prepared to be a passionate, lifelong learner and a productive, invested participant in the local and global community. My wife and I believe that it would not only be foolish, but also selfish on our part to now say that since our sons have left the school district, we don't want to do what is necessary to financially support the school district's ability to continue the high quality, to obtain the high quality teachers that you need to accomplish your mission. We encourage the school board members becoming more involved in the negotiations process and for the teachers to move ahead to obtain a fair and equitable contract, for the district to move ahead to obtain a fair and equitable contract with the teachers before the end of the year. Thank you for this time.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Claffey, and I live at 9 Whitewoods Lane in East Whiteland Township. I'm the parent of 3 alumni from Great Valley High School, Great Valley School District. A 2012 graduate who graduated also from Penn State University and is now working in England after getting a graduate degree. We also have twins who graduated in 2015, and they're juniors, one at NYU and one at Brown. Our children attend in Great Valley schools through elementary, middle school, and high school. And I would like to speak in support of the excellence of the teachers in Great Valley School District. I'm also a professional educator. I teach in Westchester Area School District, and I've been there for about 13 years. And in my experience in other school districts and also in Great Valley, I would like to really speak as a testament to the excellence and professionalism of the teachers in Great Valley schools. They focus on the academic side. Our children and their peers were prepared for the rigorous college curriculum as a result of their high school teachers' focus on challenge and rigor in the classroom in all subject areas. But before their experience in high school, the elementary and middle school teachers really established that foundation that children need in order to be successful in high school and then further into college. But more importantly than just the excellence of the classroom education, what I'd like to speak to are the people who are the teachers in Great Valley School District. I think of Anne McCrory, who was a second grade teacher who my son had, and she's taught almost a generation of second graders for years as if each of them were her own child. I think of Mr. Wiener, a health teacher in Great Valley Middle School, who would tap a student on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I think you'd make a great runner," and therefore change someone's life. I think of Brittany Carlino, who introduced hundreds of our children in Great Valley to the joy and opportunity of learning in another culture by establishing the Denmark program. And then I think of Dave Moffett, a soccer coach, math teacher, and mentor to young men
who learn to achieve as individuals while succeeding on a team. So these teachers illustrate the quality of teacher and the people who are teachers in Great Valley. So I just encourage you as a board to remember this and do what needs to be done to continue that legacy of those excellent teachers in our district. Thank you.
Do I need a clock? School board, my name is Michael Taylor, 109 Creighton Lane in Westchester, Willistown District. In June of 1995, when we were living in Chicago, I was considering coming here with 5 colleagues to build a company. And in looking at where to locate in the area, we were looking at newspaper reports and other reports on the school districts. At the time, we had 2 boys that were 3 and 1. We moved over here, and we moved into a house in Willistown in October 1995. We've been here ever since. And our 3 children have attended the entire school series, whatever you call that, from Sugartown through the middle school, etc. And we made a decision that if we were staying in Chicago, we would have put the children into private schools. And we said, when we come here, based upon the ratings, there was no way the school system would be as good as the English education that we'd received at grammar schools, but we would put them into the public system here, and as soon as that didn't actually meet our requirements, we would move them into private schools. And we had the means to be able to do that and made the decision we would do that as soon as the education wasn't satisfactory. We have been amazed by the teaching that has been provided to our children. Regularly, we've just said we don't understand where they get these teachers from. It's not what's been taught, it has been how they teach. It's been the commitment, the interest, the passion. Our eldest son, Joshua, you sent him to Cornell. Our middle child is currently finishing his double major at Penn, and in 3 months' time, you will send our daughter to Cornell. So we have nothing to complain, and we only have awards to give in terms of the education you've provided our children. In 3 months' time, we have no interest in this school district whatsoever other than as taxpayers. Please keep your standards high. Please take the long game. Yeah, America's had a great 50 years, but it needs talent to have another good 50 years. So please play the high game and invest in the talent that educates all the Great Valley students the way they're able to do here. So thank you very much on behalf of my wife and myself. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Doug Claffey, and I'm at 9 Whitewoods Lane also, along with Cindy Claffey, Cindy's husband. Where'd she go? There she is. So I won't go back over what Cindy said, but I will say just 2 things. We moved away for a couple of years. We moved to Princeton Junction in New Jersey. And if you want to learn about where high taxes are, then move to Princeton Junction, New Jersey. They're about triple what they are here. They have excellent schools there and really competitive schools, but they're also giant machines. They have 3,000 kids in a school that's, and your kid starts to feel like a cog in a machine. So paying triple the taxes, we had a good school experience, but not a great one. So we moved overseas for a few years, and then we had the opportunity to move back, and we really could have moved anywhere. But a big part of the reason we moved back to Great Valley was for the schools. And the reason the schools are so great is because of the teachers. And so I really want to encourage you all to continue to attract and retain great teachers at Great Valley. The other thing I'd say is that as a CEO who has a board, I've got a great relationship with my board. I think having a good relationship between the board and the management is really important for success. And so I'd encourage you to keep that relationship as good as you can. So with that, at least my time. Thanks.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Laura Moat, and I live at 122 Gable Road. I am the mother of 4 Great Valley graduates. Actually, right now it's 3. My youngest is graduating, and he informed me earlier it was 2 months yesterday. So he is very excited about this. But I'm here to tell you that through our years here, we moved here in 2006, February 2006 from Ohio. We didn't know anybody here. We have no family here. And so we came in blind. We never stepped foot in Pennsylvania before we moved here. The day that we moved here, I knew it was the right thing to do. When we moved our children into Great Valley School District, it was the best thing for our children. We've now graduated. My oldest daughter was a sophomore when we moved here. She is now a teacher in Ohio in the Akron Public School District, and it's because of the teachers that helped guide her here that has led her to where she is now. She has now just been offered to be one of the first teachers for the LeBron James I Promise School in Akron, Ohio. My next child owns a small business in Morgantown. My third child, she had an IEP while she was here, and I can't tell you how blessed we were by the guidance of the teachers that she had that helped her through those IEP years. She is now finishing up her second year voluntary work with AmeriCorps. So she is in California right now, and we miss her terribly, but we know that she is doing great work there. And what she's doing there is teaching in the Sacramento Public School District. And again, it's because of the teachers here. My son, who is graduating, we just signed him up. We just made the check out to Millersville University. When he started in high school, you would have never known that he would be able to make it to college. And he even told us, Mom, I never knew I was going to be able to go to college. But he also has an IEP, and it's because of the teachers within Great Valley School District, not only the teachers with the IEP, that helped him with the IEP, but all the other teachers as well who took time to teach him and to let him learn the way that he learns best. And I can't, I know I only had 3 minutes, but I could go on and on and on. And I just think these teachers really deserve our praise and anything that we can do for them. Thank you.
I'm married to that last speaker, and she stole all my points, like all my points. No, my name is Clark. I live at 122 Gable. As my wife talked about, we got to take a special trip this past Saturday. We drove our son out to university to do the orientation. I know this is kind of routine. I know a lot of families are doing this time of year. For us, it was very special because we were taking a kid who not that long ago thought it was impossible. And yet there we were. And as my wife said, our kids have gone on to do awesome things. So we have a daughter teaching in a very challenged school district, and we have a daughter who swung a sledgehammer for flood relief for a long time, and we have a daughter helping run a small business through all the ebb and flow of running a small business. And so we're really proud. And at some point in taking your kid to an orientation at a university and feeling out that whole process, and something strikes you, like your car fits like 5 people. We have a place in our car for like 5 people. A lot of teachers made that ride with us. A lot of teachers, mentors, encouragers. I thought, what do all our kids have in common in terms of what they got out of the Great Valley experience? Well, what quickly comes to my mind, they had teachers who encouraged them to push the bounds of what they thought was possible. Our kids went in each day with a certain idea of some wall they'd hit, of some definition they had of what was possible. And with some tough love, with some patience, persistence, serious commitment, their teachers pushed them well beyond what our kids thought they could do. And our kids are taking those voices of those teachers out into their lives. Well past graduation, those voices are going into our kids' post-graduation lives with them. So tonight we get, of course, really nostalgic because we're doing things like making a college visit. And part of being nostalgic is, of course, looking back on the school careers of our kids, but part of it also is just being really proud of our community And for me, for our family, the commitment these teachers have and that they've demonstrated to us and to our children and to our friends and the children of our friends, that commitment is the heartbeat of this Great Valley community. So not only do we thank those teachers tonight, but we're wishing great things for those teachers in the future as they go on to serve other generations, as they go on to mentor more kids, encourage more kids, push more bounds. We applaud them, not only tonight, but moving forward. We appreciate them, and tonight we're just blessed to have an opportunity to tell y'all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Beth Gustwhite. I live at 20 Hickory in Willistown. We have lived in the district for 19 years, and we have twins who are juniors at the high school right now. And I'm here to speak about a few topics tonight. I'm an educator in TE. I've been there for 23 years. And first, I'd like to acknowledge with the board that negotiations with the teachers have begun in Great Valley. But however, as a taxpayer, I've not seen or heard any updates on the district website. I can find the goals for the outcomes of the negotiations, but nothing further. And I would ask the board to be more transparent with how things are going in negotiations. As a public school teacher at 23 years, I'm well aware that there's part of negotiations that neither side want to be made public. But I'm also very aware of the negative impact it can have on staff morale if the teachers are not feeling respected, especially if they have to go into the next school year without a contract. Great Valley is one of the top districts in the state. We have amazing teachers who are extremely professional, personable, and dedicated to the students and their well-being. You don't get to be a top district in the state without excellent teachers. But I wonder if the negotiations process is at the point where board members should be present at the table. The legal costs of Mr. Sultanic representing the district is costing the taxpayers of Great Valley tens of thousands of dollars. And it's not the first time his services have been used when negotiating with the teachers. I request that the district negotiate in good faith by having board members who are elected decision makers at the table and stop wasting the taxpayers' money with Mr. Sultanic there in your place. It's time to show the employees that you value them and respect them. Secondly, I'd like to address a major concern we have from our family at the high school, and that's the removal of the accelerated level with the high school that has been extremely challenging for our children this year. I've written emails to our superintendent last year and prior to that, suggesting that the changes being made look better on paper, but would not be easy to be implemented. I was assured that all students' needs would be met through differentiation. However, I know for a fact that when you have 34 students in a pre-calc class, I don't care if you're Wonder Woman, it's next to impossible to meet all of those needs. I would like to know if the board has been made aware of the actual numbers of students who have had to change class levels this year due to the fact that the accelerated level is no longer available. Many students started the year in honors level classes only to have at some point have to drop down to the standard level. With all those schedule changes came class size issues, which were not planned for. Both of our children started the year in the same honors pre-calc class, and that is now down to 9 students. And our son is now in a class with 34 students. I can only assume that there's other issues with class sizes too. So they're feeling stressed, they're not having their needs met, especially when one of the classes has other students sitting in the back who are at a different level, and that teacher needs to meet the needs of all of them. I personally feel the students of the junior and senior class are impacted with the removal of the accelerated class track and that change of weighting of different courses. It could have been trickled in over the course of a few years and not pushed up immediately. Thank you.
Keith Walsh from 414 Lincoln Road. I just came here tonight. GVCO recently gave a gift to the Great Valley Middle School. I worked with Terry Lazar, which I've done in the past, and Ed Souders. I don't know if he's still here, but it was great. The money came from a group of kids, Caring Hands Foundation that we have, and the kids raised money through car washes and $10 here, $10 there, $10 there. They made a nice $1,000 gift to the middle school, which is great. But the important thing is this year, we worked with the administration this year at the beginning of the year to try to institute a more collaborative a partnership with our organization and the school district, and we've made some great strides. We had 5 fantastic interns from the high school, 5 kids that helped throughout the year. One of those kids, we just instituted an arts program, and we have high school kids teaching middle school kids art and design for the very first time. Those high school students were introduced to me through Henry McCluskey at the high school, and it was just a nice seamless transition to find a good group of kids there. In addition, Mr. Galfredo, Dr. Galfredo, helped us with our Challenger Gym program this year for the first time, and we've increased the number of students in that group by over 30%. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the reason that happened is because up front in the beginning of school, the administration was very helpful in helping us coordinate that with the school district. And that collaboration is really, it's really important to what we do and the kids that are involved in all these programs. So I just wanted to step up and say thanks, all right?
Bruce Chambers, 17 James Thomas Road. I forgot my glasses, so bear with me. There's no question that Great Valley is a good school district. We've heard from a number of families here that had good experiences. We did as well. I've lived here for 24 years. I had 2 sons graduated from the school. Since we were talking about families, I'll talk about mine. One son graduated. He now has an excellent job in media. Another son graduated. He was either valedictorian or he was the next one, although I forget what that's called. And he went on to get a PhD at Stanford. He's now a professor at the Naval Academy, and he's well written in artificial intelligence, and he's works for many companies while he's working at the academy. So we had a good experience here too. But there's also no question that things can be done in a more cost-effective manner. And that's where I think Great Valley can greatly improve, and that's where I think the school board can really help. Beginning of the meeting, there was talk about the CCIU and how we could look at ways to perhaps reduce expenses there. I would wish that you would do the same here with this budget. So I would ask you to reject the budget next week and come up with a different one. The reasons are things that I've talked to you about before. One is that the salaries and benefits for the school district have gone up 16.8% in the last 2 years. That's an astronomical number. The budget for this year you're asking now is 39% more than it was 6 years ago, which exceeds 6% a year, which is well beyond cost of living. Every information that we look at shows that Great Valley is spending much more money per student than anybody else. Even the district has promoted those studies and said that they were going to look at that and see what they could reduce. Better districts who are getting better results are spending a lot less than we are. But have we seen any reductions? No, we haven't. The budget hasn't changed since it was basically introduced a few months ago. So what they're asking for is another 6%. Plus, you're going to take $4 million in debt that has been retired, and you're going to use that for operational reasons as well. I reiterate what Bill said at the beginning of the meeting about the way the board has handled this. I think you could do a much better job than that. The school district tried to blame it on the cost of special ed, but in looking at the districts around the county, many of the districts have higher percentages of people in special ed than you do, but yet you're spending more. So I think there's opportunity for significant cost savings. Then we find that the budget that you're putting forth, and I'm going to be done in a second here, the budget that you're putting forth includes a 4.2% increase, assumes a 4.2% increase in the assessed value of the properties, which means you get a 4.2% increase in revenue by just sitting there, by doing nothing. That's 4.2%. That's a huge number. And on top of that, the administration wants another 2.4. So you're asking for a 6.6% increase in revenue. That is very high, too high. Plus, you're taking $4 million from the debt, and you're going to roll that back and keep that money and use it for operational reasons. So lastly, I would just conclude by saying that I think it's frankly ridiculous for the administration to say that they can't make any reductions in their proposal. Everybody can make reductions in budgets. I have to make them every year now that I'm retired. Any company, any outside organization has to do that on a regular basis. So I would conclude by saying that we elected you, the school board, to oversee the administration. We didn't elect them. You need to be making these overall decisions, and I think the budget that's been proposed is way too high, and there can be reductions without any elimination in the good education that kids get here at Great Valley. Thank you.
All right, excuse me, any other public comment? All right, the board met in executive session beforehand to discuss some personnel and legal issues. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good evening.